Do you know, there's something I was thinking about the other day, and I got the one idea off a gentleman or two gentlemen on the internet. One is Chad Foster Explores, and the other one is Stephen, who lives in Mindanao. I've forgotten the name of his channel, but I do watch him quite a lot. But there's two crises you're going to come up against in the Philippines. One of them will get you. You don't know which one, but it's going to get you one day. And the first one I'll come across, I'll split the video into two sections. The first one you're going to come across is dementia. It could happen to anybody. It happened to my dad. When my dad retired from work, he was a happy chap. He swept the forecourts of petrol stations, school playgrounds, whatever he could do, just to keep active, because my dad was very active. He loved being active. Anyway, when he got to 83 years old, he started to forget things, and he used to say to me, "John, I can't remember this, I can't remember that," but he could remember me. And in the end, he literally lost everything. He lost all of his marbles, so to say. I don't mean to be disrespectful. He was a great dad, he really was. You know, and my mum had to put him into an old people's home, which it broke her heart, because my mum was on her own for the next 7 years, you know, because he died when he was 90. But I used to go and see him occasionally, and he used to usher me out. I said to my mum, I says, "Mum, what's going on, you know?" I says, he talks as if he doesn't know me. She says, "He remembers you when you was a boy." I says, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, in your dad's eyes, his kids are still children." I says, "Oh, okay." She says, "And when he ushers you out, he's thinking, I don't know who this man is," which was heartbreaking for me. So I must admit, I didn't go and see him very often. I thought, well, not so much what's the point, but it hurts me, and he doesn't really know who I am, you know. But me, you know, for every single day, except when she was ill, my mum used to go and see him, and that's every single day of the week. Even Christmas Day, she'd find somebody to take her there. You know, if one of her brothers or sisters or me couldn't take her there, she'd get a taxi. There was no buses on Christmas Day. I think there's a limited service. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about is, what about if you get dementia when you're in the Philippines? It could happen, you know. It could happen to anybody. It could happen to me. It could happen to you. Especially if you're getting on a bit. But you don't even have to be really getting old to get dementia, you know. It happens to some people in the 50s. I know, because I've met people in the 50s who've got dementia. Number one, how are you going to get home? If you want to go back to the UK or America to go into an old people's home, they won't let you on the plane with dementia. You need an escort. Now, an escort is got to be paid by the government, and they've got to be able to get, obviously they've got to be able to get into the UK or America or whatever country you live in. They've got to be able to get into there. Have they got a visa? You know, and that's another thing you've got to ask yourself. If they haven't got a visa, they're going to find it impossible. And then, if you're married, you'll want to take your wife over with you. Your wife won't be able to do the visa. You need an agent. That's going to cost you money. Now, I've had a word with an airline, and they will allow an escort on with you, but you've got to go into a seat that's got special access, which is going to cost you extra money. So a flight home for me is about £600. So special access seat is going to cost £800. I know it's not a lot more money, but it's still more money. And then you've got to get a visa for your wife. Now this visa is not a visitor's visa, it's a nurse or a carer's visa, which can be got. I know that because I've looked on the Gov UK website. I don't know how it works in America, Rob, but I know you can get a carer's visa, which means she can stop with you until literally your last breath. That's another thing as well. Have you got a house in the UK or America you can go back to? If not, you've got to get rented accommodation. Now, rented accommodation in both of those countries are damned expensive. You know, I can't get a flat or a house for less than £1,000 a month, or probably even more in America, probably $2,000 a month in America, or whatever country you live in, whatever westernised country, you know, because most of the people, most of the expats here are westernised. Well, you do get the occasional ones from Japan and China, but most of us are Western. And you've got to think to yourself, can I afford it? When you get the smitterings of dementia, do you just go home straight away before it starts to affect you? Because like I say, you will not be let on that aircraft with dementia, because you're a handful. I know that because my mum used to say my dad was a handful, literally. He'd get up and wander off, and the police would bring him back, you know. But this is heartbreaking. But this is the way life goes, I'm afraid. But you never know who dementia's going to go to. Well, it happened to me. It frightens me because I'm 68. My dad was 83 when it started to take him downhill, and he ended up in an old people's home. Well, I end up in an old people's home. Can you afford to take your wife home with you, or your girlfriend? I doubt you'll get a girlfriend home or back to the UK or America. I doubt that very much. But I think if you're married and been married a couple of years, and she's been with you while the dementia's coming on, yeah, you've got a good chance, but you will need an agent to set up the visa. And the visa's probably got some conditions on it, like when you die, she's got to come back to the Philippines, because I can't see your wife getting a permanent residence visa or a green card, as they call it, you know, because if they're there as a carer, they're there to care for you, so they can't get work. It wouldn't be allowed, and rightly so, because they're there to care for you, you know. And another thing you got to think of is, if you do get dementia in the Philippines, will your wife care for you? I don't know. These are questions you've got to ask yourself. Anyway, I just thought I'd have a quick word about that, because it's something to think about, and I'm thinking about it because I don't know. I mean, I must admit, I forget a lot. I don't know about you. Do you forget? I do. I forget ever such a lot. Even my wife does, and she's only 50. You know, has she got dementia? Huh? We don't know. Anyway, that is the first part. The next part, death. This is the next part. This is something you have to think about. And this is what I was watching on Chad Foster Explores. He makes a good vlog, and also Stephen. He's a British man who lives in the Philippines. I think he lives in Mindanao. Anyway, he's a nice bloke. I love his vlogs. They're very funny. Anyway, death. Another thing you've got to think about. You will die one day. It happens to all of us. There's no escaping it. No matter how hard you try, you cannot escape death. And you've got to think about. You have to plan, you know, because do you want to get buried or cremated in the Philippines, or it could be any other country for that matter? Do you want to get buried or cremated in the Philippines? Let's just put it down to the Philippines, because this is where I live. I'm 68 years old, like I said in the first half, you know, and I've got to start saying I'm slowing down. I'm an old age pensioner. It's as simple as that. I mean, I feel 18 inside, but the body says no, you're not. And this is the way it goes. But death, right? First thing, right? If you die in the Philippines, you have to pay a death duty. You have to get a death certificate. You have to be registered for the death. If you've got money or property in the next country you live in, you've got to get proof, and you've got to send that. You've got to send that death certificate by registered post, because they won't have a photocopy. It needs to be the real thing, and it needs to be in the hands of your family or your executor, so they can go to the appropriate office, which is in the UK it's the register office. I don't know about it anywhere else, but in the UK you have to go to the register office to register the death. Now obviously you're not going to be able to take your wife with you if you do go back, and that's another thing. Do you want your body flown back to the UK or America or wherever for that case? Now I've inquired with an airline, I won't say which one because they all change, and the minimum you can get it for is £10,000 or $13,000, and it needs to be a special casket. Now what's special about this casket is it has to be vacuum sealed. The reason is because dead bodies carry bacteria, and they don't want bacteria on that aircraft, which I can understand. And also you've got to have somebody to pick it up at the other side of the wherever your body's dropped off to, you know, like Heathrow or Gatwick or Philadelphia or New York or wherever you're going to, somebody's got to pick it up. That's going to cost money. So you need a funeral director for that. I mean, my house is in Birmingham, and the nearest I could get probably is Gatwick or London, you know, London Heathrow. And obviously, if you get an undertaker, if I've got to take it to Birmingham or wherever, you know, it could be the same in the USA. If you've got to get an undertaker to take you from there to there, that's going to cost a lot of money. That's going to cost probably £500 in services, you know, because you need 2 men to carry the coffin. Then you got to have the rental of the van, and then you've got the transportation costs, you know. So thinking about all that, I think I've made my mind up, because we was talking about this because we've got 2 properties now, and I was talking about this to my wife and saying, darling, I think we need to make a will. That's another thing. Is I says to my wife, I says, what do you want to do you want to make a will? So we asked the attorney about it, and she says, yeah, I can make you a will, which is not going to really cost a lot of money. I think it's about 30,000 peso, it's a lot more expensive than the UK, but it's still cheap, you know, because I think the attorney's the only people who can make a will. You can make your own in the UK and put it into a safe, and as long as it's signed by 2 witnesses, that's all you need. But I asked my wife, I said, what do you want to do with this? I said, do you want to give it away to the family, the houses, you know? And she says, no. I says, why not? She says, cause too much arguments. I says, what do you mean? She says, I think what we should do is leave a will and ask the executors to collect the will. We won't tell them what's in the will. They'll have to collect it from the bank, the will, which has got to be collected up on the presentation of 2 death certificates, which is mine and hers, and sell the houses, sell them, and split the money between the nephews and nieces. The family, you don't need any, because they're not poor people. They're quite well off, actually. You know, they've got big houses in the mountain. But this is what you've got to do. You've got to make a plan, because if you don't make a plan, everything will go or tits up, as they say. Okay, so that's just something to think about, something for the future, because if you don't think about it, it'll bite you in the ass. Well, it won't bite you in the ass, it'll bite whoever's in the ass that's around you, you know. What happens if your wife dies first? This is another thing you got to think about first as well. Who's going to bury you? You might die in the house, and it'll be 3 weeks before somebody notices and thinks, because life is very laid back here, before somebody thinks, oh, I haven't seen Joe. Where is it? And they go and look through the window, and you're dead on the settee watching television. Television's been on 3 weeks. You know, I know it might sound stupid, but it happens. It really does happen. You know, anyway, this is something we must think about, and I'm not being joking around here. I'm being serious, because this is a serious conversation, man. You know, get something done about it. Put plans in place. And I'll say thank you to the other vloggers I've watched who've given me these ideas, because until I watched these, it hit me on the head, because I'd never really thought about it before until I watched these. But it's something you've really got to consider. Anyway, folks, have a great day, have a great life, and I hope you live a long time. Enough time so you can live a long and happy life. That's all I can say, really. See you soon. Bye.